another session of CaN, Gallant Current Affairs and News Analysis. So I have with me about 7 topics taken from today's newspaper. The first thing is the recent headline of the news is Women's Quota Bill. Now the quotas for women, particularly for women representation, has been going on for about 27 years. Now after 2 decades also we are still discussing about should there be a quota for women in parliament or not. So such a bill is actually introduced again under the Modi government. Now we have the National Higher Education Qualifications Framework. Now that is, the second is an important topic if you are looking into our education system in India and comparing our education system with the international and western world. Now the second topic has become very important here, especially in prelims. Then we have simultaneous polls. You know the one election, one nation, one election that has been in debate so much. So there is a new topic, should there be a ratification by states towards it. So that has been dealt in the third topic. Then we have the global impact on high blood pressure, that is a report released by WHO. Then again Aishwarya temples, like 3 Aishwarya temples has been actually claimed under, added to the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Then we have the Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar, like for specifically in the science field, award for the science field in India. Then we have a new term, green. Not just that, we have to actually discuss what this terminology means, especially if you are looking into environment. Now the first topic is Women's Quota Bill. Now this is actually 128 constitutional amendment bill that has actually been introduced into the parliament. So if you are looking through the history, as I have told you, for the past 27 years, since 1990s, we are actually looking to introduce this bill, like to increase the representation of women in parliament and such. We know we have the representation of women by 1/3 in, we have the local bodies and panchayat where the women are actually particularly given for, even for SC, ST and OBC, women reservation are actually given in particularly lower level in our panchayats and local bodies. But in our state assemblies as well as our parliament, no such reservation yet has been made for the women. So such a bill actually seeks to introduce the representation of women, at least 1/3 representation of women in the parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Now, the important fact which you need to know here is that presently we are following the census of 2011. So, to introduce the number of ratings or to increase the number of seats in women, we have to actually constitute a new delimitation commission and we should actually conduct the census so that we can know how much the percentage population of women is there in India currently and how much seats we can actually reserve for that woman. Now, this delimitation condition, like we have the next coming election, if you are looking, we have the next coming election 2024. So this upcoming election is coming, but no such bill, if the bill is actually accepted now too, this reservation for women won't come in 2024 election time, because the delimitation which we are talking here about is going to come only in the year of 2026. So if you are looking, 2024 is the election, after 5 years the next election is in 2029. So if this bill is accepted now, the present, like the reservation of women would be only applicable in the 2029 Lok Sabha elections. That is actually yet to come after 5 to 6 years. So that is what the article's main important thing that is actually mentioning about. The Lok Sabha elections in 2029 and not in 2024. Now this, if you are translating this bill to Hindi, it's called the Nari Shakti Vandan Abhiyan. Like you have heard the word of Nari Shakti, it looks about woman. You have to particularly be known to that, because you might get the question just replacing woman, you might get Nari Shakti. So you should know women represent Nari Shakti. So if you are looking into factors or proposals of this bill, I have told you 1/3 of the seats will be reserved for women. So 1/3 of the seats, particularly if you are talking for SC and ST, will be actually reserved. But no such allocation of seats for the OBC category, other backward classes of women, is actually mentioned in this article. Another thing is that the reservation is actually valid for 15 years. If you are looking into the history of reservation, like we know for SC, ST and all, the reservation was initially placed for just for 10 years. But this has been like more than a century or close to like 7 to 8 decades, and the reservations are still going on. So this reservation is actually based for 15 years. After 15 years, we will know if this reservation is going to continue or no. So that is some of the important provisions that have been mentioned in the article. The another important thing which you need to know here is the percentage of women actually have been participating in the parliament. So if you are looking only close to about 15% of women represent in the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and if you are looking into the states, it's much more lesser. If you close 10% is what the state assemblies have the population of women. Like the percentage of women in state assemblies is just close to 10%, and that in the central level is already close to 15%. If you are looking at the category wise, like if you are looking less than 5%, we have certain states in India like Jammu and Kashmir, Srinagar, we have Mizoram, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam. We have Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana as such, which has population of percentage of women less than 5 to 6%. So that is the condition of percentage of like representation of women in parliament and in state assemblies in India. So if you are actually getting a question like this, you can mention like this data, like 15% at the central level and 10%, less than 10% at the state levels, and you can quote certain examples mentioning Jammu and Kashmir. Then the northeastern states, you can mention Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, etc., which has actually the representation of women less than 5%. But a lot of people are actually against this bill. Now this bill is actually going to be like increase the representation of women is a good thing, but still a lot of people are actually against this particular bill, mainly stating that women as totally is not a homogeneous group. Now we can actually culminate like this like scheduled caste and scheduled tribe to a particular group, like they are a category, but you cannot say the same for a woman. So that is quoted as the first reason why woman is not a homogeneous group. That is actually mentioned in this article. Another thing is that it actually violates the constitution. It violates the right to equality, which means that women are given representation and they are actually made to sit in the parliament without the proper merit or condition. So that is actually based upon the second argument placed on the bill. It violates the constitution guarantee of equality, that women won't be competing on merit, which is actually decreases the status of the society. That is mentioned as another argument against the bill. But there are a lot of reasons, a lot of people has like portrayed it towards the bill or for the bill. If you are looking, the political parties are inherently patriarchal. Another thing is that you have seen less the women we have actually seen participate in the elections or even win the elections. So certain mindset is actually due to the patriarchal mindset of these parties. We have very less representation of women or very less women actually contesting the elections and winning the elections. Another thing is that women are still underrepresented in the parliament. We can say 15% is actually an achievement. But if you are looking at other countries, you can know Canada has actually 50% of seats that is reserved for the women, and other African countries has more than 60% of their seats reserved for the women. So comparing to this, where is this 15%? Is this 15% a high number that is a very winning in India? No. The 15% is actually underrepresentation of women in the parliament as such. And we have to include more women in the decision making. Like certain cases like marital rape is still not actually properly described or mentioned in India, or it's not made illegal in India. That is because the representation of women are very less in the parliament and they are not able to speak. The little bit of women in the parliament are not able to speak up against us. So if we have more women in the decision making roles or decision making position, we can actually address the high percentage of crimes against women. We can actually address the low participation of women in the parliament and in the workforce, and also low nutrition level like anemia, skewed sex ratio, etc. can also be. Such issues can be mentioned or addressed if we have more woman-centric roles of women in the representation of the parliament. So if you have a question, this is the for and against that you can actually mention in your answers. So that is it with this article. Let's move on to our next one. We have the National Higher Education Qualifications Framework. So if you see, since 1990s, a lot of, like if you are looking for Western and International, they have been coming with a curriculum or particular framework especially associated with the higher education. But after 2 decades of such initiative made by the international platform, our Union Grants Commission is just proposing or is taking up the higher education qualifications like in the recent years only. There has been a delay of more than 2 to 3 decades since only then India adopted this. So this actually talks, the National Higher Education Qualification Framework actually talks about a specific level at which you can actually compare different degrees. The purpose of this NHEQF is actually not to make every education system uniform in India, but it is actually to make like whatever degree you have. You might have done a BCom or something, you might have done a 3 years degree, some may have done a 4 years degree. So it is to make that all these degrees are comparable in a common platform. It is to actually make so this degree will be compatible in a common benchmark, in a common marketplace. Rather than now India, we have a lot of confusion regarding a 3-year degree or 4-year degree. What is the value of such degree? How much a person has studied within this degree? What is his outcome in this degree? So we have a lot of confusion within India. So if we have a common framework to address, like within basing a credit score, we can actually analyze all these different degrees all together. So that is actually the purpose of this introduction of National Higher Education Qualifications Framework. Now this is to have a standardized version, as I have told you. This is actually based on the degree and the number of years you have actually studied, and based upon the number of years and the degree. If I am an engineer, I have done a degree in engineering, I have done it for 4 years. Based on this, I will be getting a particular score. This score will be actually compatible all over the market and will be telling my value. So that is what this National Higher Education Qualification is actually mentioning about. And now this is actually mentioned at a level of 5 to 10. So if you are looking for level 1 to 4, it is based on school education. Like level 2 or level 3 will portray a student who is in secondary or higher studies. So that is what this 1 to 4 will be talking about, is basically school education. If you are looking at level 5 will show that you have completed the first year of your degree course, like you have completed first semester and second semester. That is shown by level 5, whereas level 10 will actually show a doctorate level of degree and such. So with the increase in level, if you are talking about level 5, the people can identify you as a person who has completed first year degree. If you are level 7, a third year person, a person who has actually completed third year of degree. So that is how this National Higher Education Qualification Framework will actually showcase the level or a standard of a student or a candidate. But the author mentions certain downfalls in this article or this present act that has actually been pulled out. So it says UGC has a multiple system. So if you are looking at the international problem, they has actually a single system where the credit and everything actually comes together. But this UGC, the University Grant Commission, actually mentions about a multiple system in place. They have the National Higher Education Quality Framework, and another is the National Credit Framework. Now the National Credit Framework is actually the transfer of credits. Now in particularly, if you are studying in a particular college, you have completed like second year, but you feel like dropping out and moving on to another course. So if you are actually going and joining a new college, you have to start from the scratch. So this National Credit Framework or this credit transfer program is that if you have completed 2 years of degree in a particular college, this credits till the credit till you have actually achieved till your second year will be transferred from that college to another college. Like particularly if you are taking my example, I did in engineering. Lot of my friends from my class has actually dropped out. So once they dropped out, they have to actually start from scratch as a freshman in a new college. So this system can be avoided, and the credit that has been achieved by that single person in that college can be till the year which he has studied can be actually transferred from that college to a new system. But the thing author mentioned here is that all this could be actually culminated together under one thing, that is the National High NHEQF. But the UGC has actually went forward and did 2 to 3 multiple systems, whereas they didn't culminate it together. That is one of the downfall that the author mentions. Another thing is that they have actually provided an exit requirement, like a student dropping out and such, but they have not told particularly about the eligibility condition or the pathways a student should actually navigate so that he can actually understand the process and such. That is actually not actually mentioned clearly by UGC. And certain others like agriculture, law, medicine, pharmacy, they have another set of guidelines with them already. So these 4 sectors are actually not brought under this NHEQF. That is also another downfall that the author mentioned. If you are looking at international examples, we have the Bologna process of European qualification frameworks and also the Dublin descriptions. Now this process, these both processes actually put forward a common platform for all the students out there who pass out. Like we have been telling about a standardized framework. Both the system actually talks about a standardized system within the market so that they can actually analyze all the students. But the problem is that if an Indian student actually goes abroad, our kind of marking system or analyzing system is very different that from the international system, and they might not be able to understand the depth of studies or how much years we have studied actually. So to enhance a parallel kind of framework where the Indian students can actually go abroad and actually seek more opportunity, such a framework is actually required. And for that, like India, if you are looking at the Indian condition, the number of subjects which you have to study is also higher or more difficult and complex. So because of which we need to have a pattern which it can actually satisfy more domestic as well as international requirements. So such a model has to be brought out in India. That is what the author says. But the author talks about some of the implementation difficulty. The one thing is that there are a lot of colleges in India, not just engineering, but if you are looking for various kinds of degree, there are multiplicity of colleges in India. So all these colleges has to actually abide by the system. Another thing the UGC mentioned is that 20 credits per semester. So they mentioned that for earning 1 credit, you need 15 hours of direct learning. 15 hours of direct learning plus about 30 hours of indirect learning. So attain 1 credit, you need to actually study or receive education for about 45 hours. To achieve 20 credits, it takes about 900 hours. Is a child going to study for 900 hours in 1 semester? That the child has to actually study for particularly at least 10 hours per day. Now this is actually a very higher rating that has been criticized by the author in this article. Nobody is going to study for 10 hours per day every day, so they can actually attain 900 hours to get a 20 credits. So that is one of the downfalls that the author mentioned in this article about the UGC regulations as well. So that is what this is talking about. You can actually expect these questions, these type of our prelims as well. Moving on, we have the last big topic, the simultaneous polls. Do states have an opinion? So you know about the one nation, one election. I have mentioned a lot about the pros and cons of that in our earlier videos. So I am skipping to the main part of today. So a particular committee based upon a former President Ramnath Kovind, the committee was actually formed to study if the simultaneous election would be feasible in India or not. So for each committee that is actually provided by the government, certain conditions or certain terms of reference will be actually mentioned. So in this Ramnath Kovind committee also 7 such terms was actually mentioned, and one was actually to find out if the simultaneous election would require the ratification from the part of states. Now this called us actually led a lot of tensions in the part of state, because majority doesn't want a simultaneous election. We know how the history of simultaneous election has actually went off, and majority of states are not interested in this form of simultaneous election. Now the government is on the top of that putting, asking the committee to find out is ratification required or not. So that is a major concern from the part of states and also from the others. So you see, a ratification from the state means it's actually a special majority. A special majority plus half the ratification from the states is required, for particularly if you need to pass some laws that actually changes the federal setups. So that is a specific majority, and no certain time limit or time frame is actually given to the state assembly to actually ratify the law. So that is actually other downfall. In certain like US and all, even the president has a certain time frame within which he has to accept or reject. But here in India, we don't have such specific time periods for certain things. So let us look deep into the article today. Can constitutional amendments be actually struck down by the Supreme Court if it's not actually ratified? So certain acts has been actually published by the government without the ratification of any states. The first one we can actually talk about the Kilgono-Holohan case. You might particularly know it as the anti-defection case, which is particularly dealing with the 52nd constitutional amendment about the 10th schedule, which talks about the anti-defection. So in this case, there was some particular clause which actually required the ratification of the states, but the central government did not actually ask the state for the ratification, and they passed the law anyway. So the Supreme Court, what they said, that they actually upheld this 10th schedule or the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act. They upheld it, stating that it is valid, but the certain clauses which require ratification from the state and the ratification was not taken from the state, that such clause was actually struck down by the government. But the government actually upheld the entire 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act and struck down a certain clause which actually did not take the ratification of the states. Now in other cases, the Union of India versus the Rajendra N. Shah. It talks about the 97th Constitutional Amendment Act. In this also, it actually required certain ratification from the state, and which didn't get was also struck down. This 97th Constitutional Amendment talks about the adding of Part 9b, that is the cooperative societies. So these both cases you can actually quote in your answers, where the Supreme Court can actually struck down if the center does not take ratification from the states. Another is can state rescind its ratification. It actually means that for pertinent implementation, the state initially says that they actually accepted the ratification, and later they are saying that no, I don't want this ratification anymore and I want to cancel it. But is that actually possible in India? In India, we don't know because certain action has not actually taken place. So, it is actually yet to come if states can actually make a certain resolution. If they actually say yes first, can they say no? That is yet to be found because no such state has actually done that. But if you are taking particularly in countries like US, it is given that if a particular state actually says yes at first for a particular amendment, if a state says yes, they cannot actually dissent to a no later. But if the state says no first, they can actually change to an yes later. So that is what the ratification regarding the US is. But in India, we don't have any kind of reference to make it. So that is actually just something we will find in the future again. If a particular state actually makes such comment, we will come to know about if a state can actually listen from it. Then what does the Law Commission has to say about this? The Law Commission is actually not happy about the simultaneous election because they say that these are not feasible. The Law Commission states that the constitution is the not only thing that would be amended. If you are actually going with the simultaneous election, the ROPA Act, the Representation of People has Act to be amended, the rules of Lok Sabha as well as the state assemblies would also have to be amended. So, making a simultaneous election is actually a huge task and a lot of amendments would actually come place with it as well. So, these are some of the main things that is actually mentioned in this article today. But with this, we have to learn something else too, like what all is the states have to ratify as well. Which all amendments actually require the ratification of states. So, there are certain criteria like these are the list which you need to by heart, like this may be asked by in the case of your prelims or in the case of mains, you might get the direct question of what all areas where there is a state ratification is actually indeed required. The first thing is the provision regarding the election to the post of president. If any such change is made to the post of election of president, that has to be ratified with the state. And extent of change of the executive power of the union to the state, that has also to be ratified. If anything, like particularly if there is any change that is coming, especially in a federal nature between the center and state, such has to be ratified by half of the state. So that is how the special majority kind of works. Then a change in the provisions regarding the union judiciary or the high court, that will be also have to be ratified by the state because high court we have follow a integrated like independent court and integrated court, like we have the subordinate courts, high court and then the Supreme Court. The states are also part of this because of which the ratification for the judiciary is also needed. Distribution of legislature and administrative powers like separation of powers, division of powers, all this has to be actually considered. Then the 7th schedule, if anything, like we know the union list, we have the state list, we have the concurrent list. If any such amendment needs to be made to the 7th schedule, it should be also ratified by the states. The representation of the states in the parliament, article 8.2. For that also, amendment is required from the states. So remember this slide is very important, take a screenshot about what all ratification is actually in the constitution is required by the states. Next we have the global impact on high BP. So this actually report is brought out by the WHO. So let us look out into the report given out by who. It states that approximately 4 out of every 5 person have hypertension and they are not adequately treated. Now over 76 million people has actually died due to hypertension, and WHO report says that the 76 million deaths could have been prevented if the countries has actually looked or scaled up their coverage. The 76 million people death could be averted. It states that 4 out of 5 people have hypertension and they are actually not treated very well. This hypertension actually causes a lot of diseases like stroke, heart attack. They are non-communicable diseases. As I have told you in my later class, where in an article by Apollo director, it states that the doctor actually states that India's focus on non-communicable diseases like hypertension is very less. You can connect this with that article as well, where you can actually quote the report of the global impact on high BP. So it states that the 76 million people died and deaths could be actually averted. The hypertension is the most important risk factor for death and for disability in India, because we have a lot like middle class family and low income families actually are affected by this kind of hypertension. It also adds that less than 1/4 of the people of India, hypersensitive patients, 1/4 of the present hypersensitive patients in India have their BP under control during the 2016-2020. Is that people have hypertension, but the control of how much control is actually pretty much very less in the case of India. So if you are looking more into this case of hypertension, it is actually mentioned that the Lancet report, even in our national family Health Survey Report 5, it states that the in the case particularly among men, the hypertension was about 19%. This has actually increased to about 24%. In the case of women, it was actually 17% and it has risen by to about 21%. This is actually portrayed in the National Family Health Survey Report 5 and it's also stated by the Lancet report. The WHO report also said that 1 in 3 adults worldwide have hypertension, and this causes, as I have told you, lead to stroke, heart attacks, heart failures, kidney, etc. is some of which is actually caused by hypertension. Also, the number of people living in India who has actually the number of hypertension between people has also increased. Later 650 million people only used to have hypertension. Now it actually increased to about 1.3 billion between the years of 1990s and 2019. That much is the rate of increase of hypertension among people in India. Also, nearly half of the people with hypertension globally are currently unaware of their condition. We might even, we are UPSC aspirants, we might even feel hypertension, but many of us are also not treating our hypertension as well. So, we can actually connect to the statement, nearly half of the people with hypertension globally are currently unaware of their condition as well. Also, more than 3/4 of the adults with hypertension live with low and middle income countries. Like in India particularly, we can see that why we have a lot of hypertension in India. So, a lot of data is actually given as per the WHO report. It's important that you at least know 1 to 2 data about 650 million or 1.3 billion people under, or the percentage like 4 to 5 people, 4 out of 5 people have hypertension is actually not treating. So, certain 2-3 data if you could remember and you can actually put in your paper means it's very good. So, what are some of the way forward or way out of this hypertension is also mentioned by WHO. The first thing is we have to make some changes in our living. We have to have healthy lifestyle, we need to eat good food, we need to take treatments. For some people even medication is required, but still if you are actually addressing or finding out this hypertension first and you are actually taking measures to solve it, that is actually a good thing. Prevention and early detection. Another thing also mentions that the economic cost associated with if you are actually first itself identifying and treating is actually pretty much less than you are going for a lead increase failures like you are not addressing your hypertension now, it might lead to heart failures or problems which you need a lot of economic cost to deal with. So, if you are actually initially addressing this problem of hypertension, no such big cost will be needed and this cost cut ratio will come down up from 18 to actually 1. So, that is also mentioned by WHO. Hypertension can be controlled effectively, but majority of people choose not to. So, that is also something the people should address. So, that is on this article. Let us move on to a few smaller topics. We have the Hoysala temples, the UNESCO World Heritage Site. 3 such temples like under the Hoysala, which are the Chaneshwara temple in Belur, Hoysaleshwara temple at Halbi and Keshava temple at Somnathpur is the 3 actually came under the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, this was in the tentative list for UNESCO World Heritage Site for a long time and finally was made in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, the total number of World Heritage Sites in India is around 42 now. You need to know a list of which all, like there are a lot of famous, you might get confused if you have done S3s like CaN question, you might understand that majority of you got this answer wrong, stating that the Convents of Goa is not actually UNESCO World Heritage Site and you might get certain World Heritage Sites wrong. So, it is important that you actually go through the World Heritage Site and make a list of the things which you might think won't come. So, it is important you learn through it because 3 has been added recently and it's a high chance that you might get this in the prelims next year. So, these 3 Chanakeshwara, Holeshwara temple and Keshava temple has been added. Now, the speciality of these 3 is like they are hybrid version of the Dravida and Nagara style of architecture we have. And also we have heard this Holeshwara architecture is based on a stellar plan and they are made of soapstone. Now, these gets hard over time. So, that is a kind of particular soapstone or steatite term that is there is soapstone. So, all the 3 temples are protected by the Archaeological Survey of India and they were nominated and the nominees were entered as the sacred ensembles of Hoysalas. So, remember the name of the 3 temples. Then we have the Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar. This is to enable the flows of new science award that has been in place. Similarly to the Padma awards, like we have the Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, this Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar also has four types of awards, which is actually Vigyan Ratna, Vigyan Shri, Vigyan Yuva and the Shanti Swarup, Bhatnagar and a Vigyan Team Award. So, that is the 4 awards, Vigyan Ratna, Vigyan Shri, Vigyan Yuva, Shanti Swarup, Bhatnagar and the Vigyan Vigyan Team Awards. So this is actually award to about 13 fields. Like we can include the earth science, physics, chemistry, maths, biology, astronomy, like 13 categories are actually mentioned under which these awards are actually given out. And these awards can be also given to the persons of Indian origin. But all the awards, like if you are looking at the Vigyan Ratna, maximum to one person of Indian origin could be only given. Vigyan Shri, maximum of 3%. The Vigyan SSB, only 3%. But in the case of Vigyan Team Awards, a person of Indian origin cannot be awarded anything, 0 awards. For the other 3 category, a person of Indian origin can be given awards, but for a team award cannot be given. The Vigyan Ratna award is actually a lifetime award for a lifetime contribution along with an excellence made specifically in the field of science. We have the Vigyan Shri for disguised contribution to any field not particularly related to science. Then we have the Shanti Swarup Padnagar, which is actually given by ICMR since 1950s, is exceptional contribution by young scientists. Now these might actually be very confusing to you, but certain statements may come where you might get confused and certain questions may actually come from this. We cannot predict the UPSC of how it might come. The team awards shall be for 3 or more researchers, so that how it goes. There is no age limits, any persons of any category of age is actually eligible for this award. So that is actually mentioned in this article about the Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar, especially for science. Coming to our last topic, we have the green nudges. So recently our UPSC has been asking certain terminologies. In 2021, we might see the terminology of greenwashing and such, especially terminologies has been coming in the UPSC question paper. So such a term is green nudge. So the recently what the article mentioned is about that a certain like a Chinese review or a report was actually stated in help with the collaboration of some food producing like food based apps and such. So there are certain options when we are ordering food online. There will be certain option for getting a cutlery along with the food. So the option will be yes, you need cutlery, or no, I don't need any disposable cutlery. So in this app, what is made that this no disposable cutlery was actually made a default option, because of which people will actually choose this no disposable cutlery, and if a people specifically need a cutlery option, they would change the default option. So because of which majority, like a 90% of people actually went with this no disposable cutlery options. So because of which it is actually green, it reduced the number of single use plastic in China, and this actually gave the customers points like green points. The customers was awarded with green points, and this actually led to an increase about 648% increase in the share of no cutlery orders. So what can you actually understand from this? We are actually pursuing the customers to actually go through a particular path. Like we are setting the no disposable cutlery as a default option, because of which we are changing the direction of the thinking of a person. So if you have not need any option, the people might, like majority actually might choose yes, we need a cutlery. But with this, you are actually putting a default option of no disposable cutlery. The number of people who are actually accepting this has actually go down. So that is what the term green nudging means. Green nudges are gentle persuasions over the people, so that they can actually adopt some environmentally friendly methods. Now in behavioral economics, if you are looking, nudges are intervention that influence the people's choices to make certain decisions without restricting the choices available to them. Here the choice was not restricted. It was just made a default option. If you are going, you can actually change the default option and make yes, you need the cutlery option as well. So the thing is that the behavior of the people is actually changed without limiting the choices. Certain negotiations will be going on, but that is the general term from what is called the green nudges. That is the thing, that is the only definition that you need to know from this entire article. So remember what a green nudging is. It's like a little bit of persuasion, so that a person could actually take much more environmentally friendly decision. So that is on this article. This has been a lengthy session. So that is it for today. I'll be seeing you again on Friday with Thursdays and Fridays news. So thank you and have a nice day.